What's up, guys? This is Melin, music composer for the screen, helping you to build a music business that supports your family. In this episode of Composer Chat, we're talking with Daniel Nissenbaum, who is an everyday composer, just like you and me. Now, Daniel is a composer and a trumpet player, and we had a really great chat recently about how to organize your life, how to organize your time, your schedule, and ultimately your projects so that you can make sure you're taking care of your family. Daniel has an awesome family, and he had a ton of great questions that I know are gonna be super helpful and valuable for you, especially during this crazy time of the global pandemic of the coronavirus, and everyone's asking questions about how to make money, how to keep money, and ultimately how to take care of their family. If you'd like to have your own composer chat just like this, you can go to stephenmelin.com/composer chat, and you can get more information there. Let's dive in.
You know, the composing life, you're kind of used, in a way, you're kind of used to the isolation and setting your own terms and everything like that. And my wife has been freelancing from home for almost 7 years. So
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we're prepared for this kind of thing, but nothing like this.
Yeah, this is next level.
Yeah, this is really
good. Sure. Well, hey,
How are
man,
you?
we're doing well. I think for the most part, it's getting used to exactly like you're saying. It's kids home 24/7. I think that's been the biggest challenge of all, because like you said, you know, as a freelancer working from home, my work isn't really any different. I'm still working on my projects, but you know, we have some older kids and younger kids. We have 4 in total. So our ages are 12, 11, 1.5, and a newborn who's now 8 weeks. So,
oh my God, congratulations!
Yeah, thank you so much. So it's a handful. That's an understatement, but getting used to the digital learning days, as they're calling them, it's a lot. And I know you're in New York, right?
Right.
So
yeah, we're in like the heart of it right now. And DOE shut everything down, and they're thinking about quarantining the city, though I don't think that's going to happen.
Wow.
I gotta say, man, for having 4 kids, you look pretty good. It's like
I do what I can. Yeah, so I'm not sure how much of our journey that you know, but we have 2 adopted, 1 foster, and 1 bio, and so we kind of have our hands in all those different pathways. It's a lot of fun, and it's a wild adventure. I think in the last year and a half. No. In the last 2.5 years, we've had 11 kids, kind of in and out. No more than 5 at a time, but it's been a wild adventure. But yeah, we've had a lot of fun with that. You know, something I like to talk about is that freelance work is actually the catalyst by which we can do this, because it gives that sustainable business in the midst of chaos, and
right,
in the midst of no schedule, that I think is pretty significant. And even times like this, in the midst of a pandemic where you just never know what's going to happen in the world. But I think it's pretty cool that we have something like this that can, keep us afloat.
This is the reason why I wanted to reach out to you, because the level of ambition, and I don't want to say selfishness, but and it's not even really self-interest. It's like self-propulsion. The amount of that's required in this industry, you usually don't hear stories about families unless it's something ridiculous. Like I think Harry Gregson Williams has 5 kids or something like that.
Yeah.
But you usually don't hear stories about this. You hear a lot of ex-wife jokes and things like that, but you don't hear how people are maintaining families in a healthy way, keeping themselves healthy, and still working prolifically. And that's this is something I've been interested in, because I rarely meet people like that. Either the people I meet are 18 and 19 and coming into the industry, or they've already been through relationships and divorces and all those things. So
yeah, well, I appreciate that. And I feel like it's a niche. It's something that it's not common. And I hope that this perhaps starts a movement that it becomes more common. And it may just be people don't speak about it enough. But it's certainly, if you've read my book, I talk a lot about, that's my why. That's why I do what I do. And that's not just a fancy phrase for an introduction of a book. It's not just a chapter of a book. I really mean that, and it's the catalyst by what I can do, what I do. But hey, Daniel, I'm excited to chat with you today.
Cool.
I would love to hear, like, how can I help you today?
Okay, so a lot of more rudimentary questions that I have, they're already answered from the website and from the book. How do you get paid for the most part? How are you looking for jobs? How do you manage your time? Though this is something I do want to ask you about, because it seems like you have a capacity to hyper compartmentalize your time in a way that's not overwhelming or obsessive, basically. Like, it seems like you have a very natural kind of flexibility and a precision in your decision making, and you're forward thinking about how you lay down a schedule for a week that I know definitely I could benefit from, and I'm pretty certain a lot of your viewers could benefit from this too, because we're in this on our own, basically. You don't have somebody breathing down your neck, except producers sending you emails or clients that have deadlines that are changing all the time, but it's not like somebody is compartmentalizing your hours. So can you explain this process, how it works for you?
Yeah, sure. This is actually a topic I have a lot of composers ask me about this, and perhaps that's a subject we need to dive into more, because you're right. There are so many resources out there about how to get paid and how to make money, how to write music, right? But I think that there is this other layer, and it's the organization factor. Now, I'm someone who I love the Enneagram system. Are you familiar with that?
No.
Have you heard of those? It's a personality type type of system. You may have heard of Myers-Briggs before, or any of those types of things, or maybe what animal are you? What color are you? There's a lot of these things that have come out over the ages. There's one right now that's really popular called Enneagrams with an E. It's just based on different personality types, and it's based on a number. And so each person, according to the system, each person has a primary number, 1 through 9, that kind of defines the way you tick. It's kind of where you get your energy from, how you spend your time, what you naturally tend to do. And then there is what's called a wing number, which is the number right beside it. So for example, I am a 3 wing 4. So 3s are the entrepreneurial types who are very self-motivated and driven and accomplished. And then 4s are creative types who are kind of, I don't want to say the opposite, but they're usually a little bit disorganized. They're much more spur of the moment, much more concerned about the artistry and the way things make you feel. And so I have met very, very few people in life who would identify themselves as a 3 and a 4, because they're kind of contrary. And so that's actually something that I have warred with for all of my life, is how can I be creative and business minded? Because the circles that I ran with throughout my life were either extremely artistic and I couldn't have any business conversations, or they were extremely business and I couldn't have artistic conversations. And they seem to be these two worlds at war. But what I've found is that is how I tick. And so the way that I organize my time is really not going to fit other people, because I'm kind of a rare breed of those two worlds coming together. But I think the more that we can understand about ourselves and how our energy works throughout the day, and perhaps what time of day is better for you to work, and how your family life works, right? There's a lot of factors and components here. But that might be something you'd be interested in looking into. Not that it has to be an end-all description or you have to fit within the box, but I think of all the personality tests out there, it's become a standard question that people ask in interviews and that kind of stuff to help better understand kind of where are you coming from. We don't have time to go through all the numbers, but it might be something interesting for you. So I think within the composition industry, within the music industry, most people are 4s as far as that goes. The number system goes. They're artists. They're people who they write when they feel like it, when the lightning strikes, when the muse is there. And so that's actually why a lot of people struggle with business, because they don't know how to make money, but they know how to write good music, and they don't know how to market themselves. And so they don't know how to read contracts. They don't know how to negotiate a good deal, and they get screwed over a lot of times. And then perhaps that same breed of people, they have a really hard time being organized and planning and scheduling. And those are really hard skills to learn if they're not natural to you. So I think the more you can understand about yourself, the more, where you lean naturally, I think it's going to help a lot. So I'm curious, just so I can help you specifically and anyone listening, how would you define yourself as far as a personality goes? What are you typically more of an organized person, or are you more, let me just do stuff as I feel like it?
I started off definitely in that artist mentality where I would only do stuff when I felt like it. In fact, there was a period of time where I made it a point to only do things when I felt the conviction to do it. And, that only takes you so far. And when I started to get into scoring as a business, I realized it wasn't going to work. So I tried to make some kind of balance. And I find that I've really developed my business skills, but there's still some kind of polar shift between my artistic side and my business side. So I feel like both are pretty well developed. It's just that they're not always working in tandem, and they're not always balanced. So, the ability to stay objective, I think is huge and can be very difficult. You get music thrown out, you get fired, you're dealing with all kinds of, let's say, interestingly minded people who are, you can be a conflict with sometimes, and being able to take those things in stride and actually use them to propel you. That's the most, I think that's the most important thing to succeed socially in the business. And this is something I'm still struggling with, because I can't make these two sides meet, even though they are developed.
Well, here's a suggestion. I have found in my world that the day that I decided to have a set schedule that repeats, that's the day that I started to see my productivity skyrocket.
Are you saying doing the same thing at the same time from day to day, or you're saying that you have a general time structure? Oh, sorry, I'll let you talk.
No, it's okay. I think it could go either way. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer there. But what I'm referring to is I have a set work time. Even though I'm not a 9 to 5 employee of somewhere, I have a set schedule. And so here's the conversation. Like, we're being totally real and honest right now. I have 4 kids at home right now, and they're supposed to do school, right? And here I am, the only one working at home. My wife is helping with kids, and it's a lot. It's a lot to do. And the first 2 weeks of this pandemic, of we're stuck at home, we struggled because we were just trying so hard to find a rhythm that worked for everybody. And here we are, probably not even halfway through, the predictions are we're going to be in this for a while. And we're trying to figure out these rhythms. So everything I had, my whole world, my whole structure was tested. It was shattered, to be honest. And even, to be frank right now, you and I were talking at nighttime when normally I would never work at this time. But right. We've had to completely shuffle around what does work time look like. So
right.
It wasn't an instant fix. It wasn't a, hey, I guess tomorrow this is going to be our new schedule for the next 3 months, 5 months, whatever. Instead, we tried things. Some things failed, some things worked. Tried things, some things failed, some things worked. And that's just what any kind of entrepreneurship is. It's trying things until they work, or failing to, and then learning from it, right? So like right now, my schedule is just completely different. I'm doing a lot of night work. I'm doing a lot of super early mornings. Like, I'm working at 6 a.m. right now sometimes. I'm filming videos at 6 a.m. Things, I would never do that in my past seasons, because I'd be taking kids to school, or I would be running, I'd be like kickboxing at the gym. But now all that stuff's closed down. So I'm having to figure out, okay, I had to break it down. Like, what are the absolute essential things in my life that I have to have for a successful day? And for me, that's exercise, that's eating right, that's sleeping right, that's making sure my family's taken care of. And once those 4 things are in order, then I can work. And perhaps that's a backwards mentality for many who don't have families, or they don't maybe care as much about their personal health. But for me, those things are paramount. And I would even add a 5th one in there, and it's to have like a little bit of meditation time in the morning. As a Christian, I pray and I meditate and I journal, and those types of things all combined together in the morning set the entire day for success. There's a lot of people who talk about the miracle morning, that by waking up at 5:30, there's something powerful about waking up early and having the whole house to yourself, to have that mental space to plan for the day. And I've found that the days I do that, and certainly the days that I've done that the last couple of weeks in the midst of this, my days have been completely transformed, because when I have a plan for the day, I literally just go bullet by bullet. And then if there's an interruption in the day, like there's a crying baby, or I need to go change a diaper, or I need to help a kid out with homework or whatever, hey, let's just take a family walk. Let's go to the park. Whatever is going on, I can stop what I'm doing because I have a to-do list that's on my screen, and I come back to it. And if I don't have time, we shut down the computer, wake up the next day and try again. So I guess the principle here, the underlying principle is, if you have a to-do list and you have a structured, repeatable process in this season of life, and every time you go back to work, you're just hitting the very top item and getting as far as you can. And then if your life's interrupted, great, come back, hit the next item and go down. So the question then is, when do you have in your calendar that you are kind of the checks and balances of first setting the schedule, the priority, and then having an accountability in your life that helps you update it as you go? And so for me in my life, this has never changed. Every single Sunday night before I go to bed, I spend the last 15 minutes planning the entire following week. And then the very beginning of the morning, as I'm kind of going through my ritual of exercise and breakfast and meditating and stuff, I go through my list of the day, and I just kind of remind myself, I look at all the items of the day and I reprioritize what's the most important, do that first. And then I just go on the list. And I have found that just this simplicity of prioritization it's completely changed my life, because now I only do the most important thing every time. And if you do that, you will always be productive. You'll feel productive. You'll be energized because you got crap done. And obviously you're going to see results, which motivates you even more.
Right.
So I just think it's the combo of those things, but the most important is setting priorities and kind of having those milestones in your life that help you to always shape that into where you need it to be.
That's a great answer, because, I mean, especially these days, and the last couple of weeks are not a good example, but maybe they're a great example, because life is going to dramatically change for all of us, and as it has already. I've got a 3.5-year-old and a 5-month-old at home. Both my wife and I are working from home right now, and so I find myself working like 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. shift.
Wow. Yeah.
And so time has a tendency to become amorphous. And I feel like the things that the things that you've just listed would really help give it a semblance of shape, a semblance of definition. And I feel like if there's definition in the scheduling and in the understanding of the tasks at hand, it's easier to follow through with them with conviction, which I imagine is part of the satisfaction to begin with. It's like if you're going to do a workout and you're kind of, half-assed hitting the bag or something like that, you're going to feel the same thing. You're giving yourself that same kind of energy, right?
Absolutely.
If you know exactly what you're doing, if you do the thing that you want to do with conviction, you hit the bag, you put the energy out, right? Mm-hmm. Is that okay?
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. And I think you're totally right that, man, finding pace, I think that's the word we're dancing around here. Every season has a different pace, but you need to make sure that it's a healthy pace. So you're not sprinting and wearing yourself out and killing yourself, but you're not crawling. And I think every season has its own pace. And you have to figure that out. So I think that organization is going to help you as you plan forward.
All of my career so far has been freelance gigs, working for podcast companies, doing films, doing TV kind of stuff. I've never tried to break any ground with production music, and there's tons of materials out there. I've read a lot of stuff. I've looked at a lot of production music libraries. What would you recommend is a good way, procedurally speaking, again, based on this organization that you're talking about, what would be a good way to approach starting to put together material for pitches?
Okay. By pitches, do you mean to get into production library companies, or to like become on their roster, essentially?
I mean, theoretically on the roster. My working idea right now is to find a style that I work with well, cross-reference it with a lot of other stuff I hear on, APM or something like that, and then put together a whole album of music, mix it and master it, and then pitch the whole record. Again, I'm just getting my feet wet with this thing, so I don't know what the most effective way is. I know a lot of guys do single tracks and they pitch it. I'm kind of in the dark here.
Yeah, production music is its own pursuit for sure. The guys who make it successfully and actually make real income from it, they're outputting at least 5 tracks a week. Mm-hmm. Like they are writing every single day, and that's what they do. They don't even do custom music gigs. They're just always outputting music in one particular style. And yeah, they get in contact with usually just one. It only takes one collaboration to be on a team that you're kind of one of the go-to artists for that team. So I've had a very bittersweet experience. I really can only speak from my own experience with production music, but because there are so many ways to do production music. There's kind of the low end hanging fruit where there are a lot of free sites such as Audio Jungle or Pond 5, several like that there's about 20, honestly, that you can upload today, and you can do a non-exclusive license with them where you might sell the track on there for $15-20, and then you're getting maybe 30%, which is not bad, but you're only getting about $3 to $5 per sale. And even in a best case scenario of you doing this full time and you have all your assets spread across 15-20 different sites, you're not going to make a lot. You're not going to make a living out of it. You might make $1,000 or so per month, but that's a lot of work for not a lot of return. And so that's kind of the low-hanging fruit model. And you really can't do the low and the high. The high is when you do exclusive tracks and you put out only a few tracks, but every single one is like to spec for something very specific, such as promotional campaigns and ad campaigns, usually for the big TV networks. A lot of their so that's more if you write epic type music. And then there's kind of that third angle, which is the inspirational corporate type music, which people can license. And so it's honestly, there's even like an ultra high end, which is more like the $50,000, $200,000 gigs where you're scoring huge movie trailers, which is kind of its own animal as well. So there's a lot of moving pieces in this, but the main thing is if you wanted to get into this, then really the only high end income success you're going to have is if you're paired with an exclusive deal where you're earning probably at least 50%. Or at least a 60-40 split with the production company where they're pitching everything that you write. So I've been with several companies over the years. I've had really positive experiences and really negative ones. And the negative ones were always the same, where they don't pay you anything up front, and they hold all the rights to your tracks, and they only pay you when they land. That's not a great model. There are others that will pay you up front and pay you when they land. That makes sense because you're being hired to write something, and that's really only possible if you're one of maybe 15 or 20 composers on their roster versus some of these lower ones where you're one of 20,000.
Right.
And you don't know them by name, you don't have phone calls with them. It's just a completely different experience. And unfortunately, there is no step-by-step procedure of here's how you get into these companies. It honestly has to do with them reaching out to you. And the way that happens is by having a very strong online social presence. It's by having a YouTube channel that's successful. It's by having, perhaps like in my case, I teach a lot online. So a very strong course portfolio, and obviously writing a book, and maybe you speak at conferences, and your name's out there and people know your name. And so it's a whole lot easier for those production companies to approach you with a very strong deal that's in your favor because you can negotiate. And you already have, as you were starting to mention, you already have albums, you already have things set aside that when they ask, hey, what can you send me? You already have 2-3 albums you can send them. And of course it's a great fit and you can move on from there. Some of those higher end ones, usually about once or twice, I'd say in many cases, maybe even 3 or 4 times a month, they're putting out almost like casting calls where you're a part of their agency, and they're only asking maybe 20 different composers, hey, here's like a $5,000 ad campaign for Olive Garden or whatever, Coca-Cola, insert big name here, and you're all kind of fighting over that. I do not love that model as a composer who loves to work with people, and I love to creatively come up with solutions. I want to work with individuals and with companies that want to work with me. That I'm not a big fan of the cattle call business model.
It's less collaborative, intimately collaborative.
Yeah, it makes sense from their business model that they just want music, and it doesn't have to be by a specific person. They just want whatever fits the client's brief. But that's why I say it's a different beast. It's a different industry altogether. And I feel like if you're going to get into production music, then you better get into it, and you better be one of the best. Mm-hmm. So you can certainly start that process now by making albums. But unless someone's already contacting you, or you're already good friends with someone who's in those, it's just going to be a challenging uphill battle the whole way, and it won't end well for you. And you could even use this same business model idea for custom music as well, and freelancing in general. When you're on the higher ground and someone's asking for you to do something, they're going to hire you to work. When they approach you, you get that higher ground, and you get the negotiating. You get to say what the price is, or you can say no. Those are the two options. But when you're begging and you're sending cold calls and emails, hey, can I join your roster? Best case scenario, they're going to give you a bad deal because you're just going to be another composer reaching out. So if you want to get into it, you got to get into it by going hard, and you'll be doing lots of calls and interviews, and I think you're going to weigh yourself out. I would much rather see someone approach you because you're doing so well in the industry naturally, because those are the real relationships that are going to form anyway over time. Or chances are you're just going to be at an industry event and you're going to run into somebody, and you'll spark a relationship, and good things will come from that. And really the best things in life in my world have all come from personal relationships that have been super organic, nothing forced. And it's always been a very positive experience.
I would definitely agree with that. So what would you recommend for somebody? Because it seems like you have a pretty prolific social media presence and system of engagement. What would you recommend for people who are particularly taciturn with their social media output? Because I don't have a problem. I don't have any problem communicating with people, but there's a certain kind of presence that you need, like a certain sort of projection of yourself that you need when you're doing something on YouTube or on Facebook or something like that. Kind of, I don't want to say self-aggrandizing advertising mechanism, but what would you recommend for people that don't feel innately connected to that medium? How can you grow from that?
I recommend that you choose a platform that is not awkward for you, that is your natural way of communicating. For me, I love video because I love face-to-face. I love talking with people in real life, so it doesn't feel any different to me. And of course, there's technology that you have to get used to. Like right now, I'm talking into a camera talking to you, but I think a certain amount of experience kind of overcomes those technological challenges. But really, you have three options if you want to build an audience online in 2020. You either need to do it by print, which is going to be blogs. And these are all free items, by the way. So blogs, which are free. You can do it through audio, which would be podcasts, which are free. And you can do it through video, which is YouTube. Those are your three options. So pick which of those three you feel like you have the strongest chance at, and then go 100% into that one. I have made the mistake of doing all three. And unfortunately, doing all three for a while, I learned the hard way that you can't do all three at once. You can eventually do all three once you have a team behind you. And what's really happening behind the curtain is you're still doing the one and the other people are converting to the others. But if you don't know which of those to choose, I would choose the one that you feel like you can maintain long term. For a lot of people, it's podcasts because you can literally talk into your phone. Maybe you're driving to work and it's just hanging up there and you're just talking into it on your commute or whatever. For a lot of people, that might just be something as part of your routine in your life. maybe you take a walk every day, and that could be your 15 minutes where you give a 5-minute podcast episode or something. It needs to be baked into your schedule, or else it's never going to happen. Mm-hmm. And just to put some things in perspective, Family First Composer, the book that we're talking about, that was a series of 25 blog posts that I turned into a book. Did you notice that? Did you ever catch that?
Yeah, it made sense with how the book was assembled.
Yeah, because those blog posts were the top asked questions from composers, just from everything I've done, from social media, from YouTube. YouTube has been its own beast for me. It's been through a lot of seasons, but I'm finally feeling confident in it because I have a schedule. Speaking of organization, I have this entire year planned out in a giant Excel spreadsheet, and I have a videographer and editor that I consult with every single week. And we edit it, and we make sure it's up to date. It's always fresh content that makes the most sense for right now. And that's a change of pace for me because I'm so used to doing things by myself. And podcasting is something that, it's easy to it's super accessible, and it doesn't require your face to be on a camera. So if that's something that would be a challenge for you, that's one way to do it. And perhaps a fourth way to build credibility is by building community. You can create a Facebook group. You can create a forum group. You can create a Discord server. Nowadays, there's so many apps out there. Just find what's happening right now in the world and try to create a community around it. Because ultimately, if you're not giving something, then you'll never receive. So as a musician, that's hard because it always comes across as self-promotion when we talk about ourselves, right? Because we're actually asking, we're trying to receive something before we've ever given. But as soon as you start giving out and you provide opportunities, such as a community where you're connecting like-minded people, or perhaps you find some local events. Once the pandemic stuff has all died down, we can find some events. Let's say you want to get into production music, then I would go find where do production companies hang out, not the musicians, but where do the actual people who hire, right? If you wanted to write more I know you do film music. If you wanted to hang out with more directors, then you'd find those conferences and those meetups in your area. And that's really where all this stuff stems from, is you need to organically assimilate into the culture and the environments of the people you want to work with. Because if they don't know who you are, they're not going to find you and they're not going to hire you. But real gigs always come from those natural relationships. But yeah, certainly from your own home and your own lifestyle and schedule, finding ways to put content creation into your everyday world is of paramount importance right now. Because without it, you're not going to be growing. You're just going to be kind of stagnant, staying the same, wondering why no one's hiring you, because there's nothing out there doing the work for you. If you're the only one doing work in your business, then you'll always have this cycle of wondering where your next paycheck's coming from. But if you have, as I call them, little ships that you're sending out into the world, whether that's a product or that's free content that people are consuming, whether that's a blog post, a podcast episode, a course, a book, an ebook, there's 15, 20, 30 ways that you can do this, that if you just send little ships out, some will come back with gold, others will get lost out in the sea and drown. And as long as you're every once in a while putting out new ships, it will always exponentially grow. And that's really what scaling a business is. And hopefully there comes a point where you have enough income to bring on more team members to send out even more ships. And it grows over time.
It sounds like you would like this podcast, Masters of Scale.
I have actually listened to that, and I was very pleased to hear that you write the music for that. So congrats on that gig. That sounds like a really fun one.
I appreciate it. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to plug the show, but like you're literally talking about what the basis of the show is. So it's like, it's refreshing to hear it. Cause I certainly didn't hear anything like that in school. I went to Berkeley and everybody, they're like, hey man, want to hang? Let's play. Let's do this. Okay. How are you going to pay your tuition? Where are you going to eat? I don't know. It's kind of a mess.
Yeah.
Let's see. Okay, so let's say this. I got into scoring late. I did not study this in school. I studied brass in school. I'm a trumpet player. I went to Berkeley. I studied trumpet playing when I was at college. I got into composing entirely on my own very late. I mean, compared to most people who go to school for it, at least. I don't know. I'm 30. I'm 35 now. I think I got my start when I was 30. My question is, I'm still trying to figure out how to compartmentalize all of my various aims. Like right now, if I'm thinking about how I can go about getting work, I think about what you say, how you need to build organic relationships. You have to have some kind of like a seed growth, but in a natural way with somebody, and build a relationship from that. And the work has to be an outgrowth of that relationship ultimately. For me, knowing exactly to aim, because I feel like I'm aiming in all directions. It's like, okay, so there's 40 different genres. And every genre has, 100 different subgenres. You could write with all of these different sample libraries, and you can hire an orchestra, and you can do all of this different stuff. It's like, okay, today I'm going to write horror music. Tomorrow I'm going to write, techno. Tomorrow I'm going to do like some kind of square push or something or other. Like, how can you take something like this, the very wide, like landscape perspective, and shrink it down to this and say, this is something that I want to work on. I can work on this to the exclusion of all of this because it's peripheral. This is something I want to develop and follow through with, actually develop it, and then see results from that. I'm not saying you choose a path and that gets you the gig, but I'm saying, how do you find with conviction the path that's right for you, and follow that through to a point at which it leads to another path, because that's life, path to path.
Fantastic question. I love everything you just said. This is probably the number one issue that plagues any composer trying to make a living. Because there's a difference between a hobbyist composer, someone who does something for their own artistic output, they just want to do it for fun, and then composers who want to make a living. They're two totally different things, and they don't usually coincide too much. In fact, I often will write a project that is paid, and once it's kind of out of my system and I got the paycheck, I will sometimes just go and sit at a piano and play something for me, just to remind myself that, okay, I can still have this. This is not just work. This is something I really enjoy. So for a hobbyist, it doesn't matter. Your demo reel could really just have any genre. It doesn't matter. You could have retro video game music next to an orchestral epic trailer, whatever. But to the professional, to a potential client that visits your demo reel and your website, they will never hire you, and they will never understand you or why you could help them if you don't have a clear message. We as freelancers have every opportunity in the universe at our fingertips right now, and that is choice paralysis. We are literally stunned. We cannot move forward because we always chase a new rabbit, and we never pick one, and we never build a career because we're always trying something new, to the chagrin of actually doing something of purpose and that's meaningful. So the good news is there is no wrong answer. If you are capable of writing in 5 different styles, awesome. Pick one. Pick the one that is the most fun. Pick the one that adds the most value. And if it's a money thing and you're really trying to build a business, pick the one that's the most profitable. So I'll give you an example. In my world right now, I do 3 things. I used to do like 10. I used to do 10 mediocre, but now I do 3 things at the top level. I do 2D video games in a retro style, specifically Super Nintendo. How specific is that, right? And there's very few people that do that to that level. I do epic trailers in a very hyper Hollywood produced, over the top style. The third style is fantasy audio dramas, specifically in a horror, super creepy style, which is something specifically like a medieval Gothic style, using things like hurdy-gurdy and dulcimers and just weird ethnic string instruments from the 1500s. Notice those are all super micro niche type things. We've all heard of niching and this idea of picking something. Like, I'm looking at your site right now, and I was actually kind of listening through your demo reel and wondering, what does this guy actually do? Because I don't know. I can't tell. And it's very obvious that you don't know. Because, for example, you have a lot of documentary music, which is really cool and very indie, like guitars and atmospheric, which I actually think, listening through all of it, that's your sound. It's the most interesting to me and the most hireable. And then you go into some other things which are like super playful orchestral music, and then you have some trailer-esque type music. And you could pick any of those and do well with it, but right now your demo reel and your video reel says that you can do everything, which means you actually can't do one thing super well.
Exactly.
It's the amateur persona that we don't want to have. Because unfortunately that's what amateurs do, and it's no stab at you. I have been there 500 times in my life, and I've needed mentors to slap me in the face and say, stop doing that, pick one thing. And so what I had to do is I had to back it up, and I had to pick one thing. And what's funny is the most financially viable of all of the things that I do is actually the super niche. It's the micro niche. It's not the 1 or 2 or 3 layers deep. It's the 5, 6, 7 layers deep, where I'm the only one in the entire universe that does this. You can look it up. I'm literally the only medieval orchestral, audio drama fantasy podcast. It's like 7 layers deep. And I'm the only one who does it, and they have the budget to hire me and to hire live orchestras and live choirs. What? It's so niche that they have a fan following on Patreon that they can hire to do the most outlandish, huge scores. And this is kind of the future we're walking into, is the more niche you can get, the more narrow you can get and be the expert of one thing. Mm-hmm. You will have so much success in your life because everyone will know you as that one thing. And the best part is you get to choose what that one thing is. And perhaps you try it and it doesn't work because you're not 100% convicted and you're not bought in, then it's not going to work out. But try number 2, go down that route. And so I'm kind of at this place right now in my career where I've had to back up and kind of retrace my steps and pick 3 different things. And now, in order to do all 3, I have to manage all 3 at the same professional level, but that's also why I have so much work. And even to your point earlier, we were talking, the very first thing we talked about was family first. And that is my conviction. Family first composer is a conviction of mine. It's what all of my education stuff stems from, helping people not to build music businesses, but to build music businesses that support their family. And no one else on YouTube does that. And back when I had a podcast, that was the only podcast with that subject. But then I learned by trial and error that my YouTube channel outperformed 100x in the metrics and in the engagement as the podcast. Isn't that wild? And so it's proof. The analytics prove that people engage with me personally when I'm on video, when I'm talking to them versus my voice. I never knew that until I had the data to prove it. So you got to run some tests, run some experiments to see what actually works. Look at the hard data. Perhaps you want to just set aside 6 months and you say, for the next 6 months, I'm only going to do, if you'll take my recommendation, I think documentaries are going to be your niche.
So almost all of my experience has been in documentary work. So that's
okay. Are you interested in continuing in that?
I would love to.
Yeah.
I'm at this point, I'm at this point right now where I have some credits and I have like some good credits, and I need to know what to pitch to directors that I'm interested in working with. And my idea is to write directly for them, to learn about their projects, to watch their films, to write something that would complement or lead them maybe in a new direction that's relevant to them, and then pitch them directly. But it's on the basis of cold calling and, meeting people at film festivals and stuff. So,
yeah. I mean, in any industry, there's going to be that ground floor level networking, and it's as long as you're organic and you're keeping it real, and if you are sending cold messages, you're actually providing value, you're fine. And this is something I talk a lot to the video game community, just because there's a lot in my audience that do video games. I often talk about messaging. Yes, it's a cold message to video game developers, but when I message them, I'm actually giving value. I'm saying, hey, I love your game. Here's what I love about it. This is not a copy and pasted message. I'm actually writing a genuine message. And I'm talking about how much I love their artwork and their gameplay, whatever. I'd love to check this game out. Hey, are you interested in if I wrote a free track for you for this game? And chances are 1 out of maybe 20 people will actually respond, you know what, that'd be really cool. I'd love for you to write a free track for this. And then you write them the track, and then they say thank you. And then maybe 10% of that crew that actually you wrote a track for will hire you. So long as you're personable. And so just a little story, this just happened to me a few months ago. I did this process. I do this pretty often. I did this with a video game developer. I wrote them a free track for their trailer for their game. Turns out that they got massively funded on Kickstarter. And here we are now, I don't know, 3-4 months later, and I've been hired for a full soundtrack for the game Monster Sanctuary. I've been doing those live composing, and that's a massive soundtrack, so much that I had to hire an assistant composer to keep up with the demand. That came from a free offer because it was extremely valuable to them in that moment when they didn't have a budget, and then they realized, oh wow, now we have money, and now we have the guy for the thing. That's one way that you can do it. There's many ways, but cold calling is it can be done well. It can be done as long as you're adding value. And when you give away free things, you don't ever give away anything for free. You're exchanging it for something. So you're exchanging it for a future contact. You're exchanging it for an email address that you can nurture and warm up over time through a sales funnel, turn it into a product purchase later, like a music pack, or you can turn it into a course later if education is your thing, or you can turn it into following up a year from now. Hey, I really enjoyed writing this for you back then. What are you working on now? And then chances are you do this enough, you're going to meet these people in real life when you go to conferences and when you see them, because they're going to remember you because you made a huge impression. So there's no right or wrong way to do these things, but ultimately you have to pick one. So Daniel, I would encourage for you, just as we wrap up here, I would encourage you to pick one thing. I think it's going to be documentaries because that's where your experience is. That's where you have the most connections. That's what people already know you as. And I think it's your best sound, honestly. It's the most unique. I personally, just being candid here, when I listened to your other music in other genres and styles, it sounded like you were mimicking other composers. But when you wrote the documentary pieces, it sounded like you.
Cool.
It had a very unique, Eunice. It had the Daniel sound, right? And I think that's saying something. And so what I would encourage you to do is clean up website, clean up your social presence to be the guy for that thing. And I would maybe just for 6 months repurpose everything in your life to just be that guy. When people ask you, hey, what do you do for a living? I am a documentary film composer. Boom. Don't say anything else. And I noticed that even on your website, you talk a lot about being a trumpet player. Do you want that to be part of your brand?
I mean, at this point, it's totally not relevant because nobody is playing right now. And actually, since I started doing the podcast about 7 months ago, I've rarely been playing. So it's really not that relevant to me anymore.
Okay, then I'll get rid of it from the website. And this is real life. Things change. Seasons change. I don't feel like that is going to serve your audience because supposedly, like if your potential clients are filmmakers, documentary makers, they want to go to your website. They want to see from the home page that you are adding value to them, that there's something on there that grabs their attention. Your demo reel doesn't need to be any more than 3 or 4, maybe 5 tracks max. Nothing fancy, nothing over the top, just clear to the point. Only put your absolute best music, the best music that you want to write more of. I made this mistake years ago. I would put my best music up, but it wasn't what I wanted to continue writing more of. It's just what I was the most known for or whatever. And so, yeah, you need to put up exactly what you want more of in your life and it'll start to come. And if you start working on things such as SEO, search engine optimization, you can get yourself ranked very highly in Google. If you are active on YouTube, it's the world's second largest search engine. So if you have a lot of terms in there that documentary filmmakers would be looking up, you're going to come to mind. If you have a podcast and it's teaching how to write music for documentaries, a documentary filmmaker might hit those search terms. And you just got to kind of rewire your brain to think, where does my potential client, my ideal client, where do they hang out? Where do I get to be around them? And then how do I connect them from point A to point B to point C to where it's a sale? It actually turns into a real gig. That's all the time we have for today, but Daniel Nissenbaum, everybody go check his work out at nuttreemusic.com. Go check out his music, and hopefully by the time you see this, it'll be completely different. It's going to be all documentary music, and then we can share it with our friends and get this guy hired more. Well, cool, Daniel. Thank you so much. It was a lot of fun talking with you today.
Stephen, really a pleasure. I appreciate your time and your wisdom. Thank you.
Thanks so much for watching, guys. If this video was helpful for you, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more content like this every Wednesday. If you want to go deeper in your music business and answer the top 25 questions from composers, then check out my #1 Amazon best-selling book, Family First Composer. You can download that as an audiobook, ebook, or even the physical copy today at stephenmelin.com/FFC. Thanks so much for watching, guys. If you want to check out more content like this, check out this Music Business Rants playlist, and I'll see you next time.